I am overjoyed because today I get to interview Josh. Josh Reeves is the lead minister at Mile High Church here, and he has just released a brand new book, Sacred Time, Finding True Peace in a Busy World. And I wanted to talk with him because I literally have found this to be a treasure chest of wisdom, of spiritual gems from other spiritual masters. And what I loved about it is that I feel like you can pick this book up and you can open it to any page just at random, and there is something that can speak to you just from that page. It's not a book that necessarily has to be read from the beginning to the end, but it can be used as an oracle per se of what do I need that can speak to my heart today about creating sacred time in my life, creating spaciousness in my life. And I think also a signature of a really fabulous spiritual book is that as you're experiencing it, you can hear the author's voice in your head. You can feel it. It is so written in your voice, Josh, that I can just hear you as if you're speaking to me as I'm reading it. So thanks for having a conversation today about your new book of wisdom.
Thank you. Thanks for inviting me to do this, Zemirah. And all ministers are unique, but one of the reasons I'm always overjoyed to have a discussion with you is that part of our ministry and our spiritual practice is reading and writing and knowledge and spiritual practice. And so any conversation I have with you that's just outside of work and just about ministry and life is always really exciting. And as someone who is so well read like you are, that the fact that you like my book is really meaningful to me.
Oh, well, thank you, Josh. Likewise. And, I think this book is such a gem because it offers people a place to focus if they want to create more sacredness in their life, if they want to create more spaciousness in their life. But I want to hear from you, what was your primary intention? What was that divine spark that prompted you to write this?
I'm going to give the long answer and then the short answer.
Okay.
Because we're ministers, I primarily in my life wanted to be a writer. Mm-hmm. I wanted to be a writer and I wanted to live up in a cabin and really not have to work with people. And two things happened. One, it turned out that I really do love people, and God's calling in my life is to be in community. And so I don't get to be a hermit. The second is that I learned overall I'm a better speaker than I am a writer. It's just true. And yet I wanted to stay true to writing because it's such a part of my spiritual practice. And I get to write sermons and deliver them, but writing books was important to me. And when I became a minister, I said, every 2 years, Josh, you're going to write a book. And one day I hope I get a bunch of money and can research, and write some 400-page epic or some super researched book. Yeah. But really kind of always what I've done is, what's been the theme, Josh, in these last 2 years of sermons that you've given, and write a book about it. And, and then I wrote different things. And so in a degree, Sacred Time is, noticing that I was talking a lot about finding the eternal in temporal reality, and that I had done so much work, as you have, Zemirah, on spiritual practices, that I wanted to write down a little bit about my philosophy of that. We're in this thing called religious science, which we love, and yet so much of my religion is spiritual practice. And as you know, that has an interfaith component, and I wanted to put that down on paper, and I love that you see that in the book. I also wanted to write a spiritual practice book. And a spiritual practice book is the kind of book, just like you said, that doesn't have to be read from front to back. It's something to be chewed on. It's not meant to convey a bunch of instructional information. It's there to be a spiritual practice and to help heighten our consciousness. And so those are the three things the book is really about. And the other thing I would say is I think it's the first book that I've written that was really for me. I wrote a book about the Beatles, and I knew from the beginning it was for my dad. I know he listened to the sermon. He passed away recently. I don't know if he ever read the book, but it was for him. And then I wrote a book called Spiritual Narrative that was about finding your soul story in the midst of all the stories that you tell yourself. And I realized after I wrote it, it was for my mom. That was an area my mom always struggled with. And then I wrote a book called Loose Change, and I didn't know who I wrote that for. And then my wife came in the room after reading it and said, "This has changed my life," and applied it. I go, "Oh, I wrote that for her." And the truth may be with this one that it's for my kids to a degree, but I really wrote, and I'm glad that you hear my voice in it, because I really wanted to put my spiritual philosophy on paper a little bit, not in a hyper extensive way, but just really in a simplistic way. And the key is hoping in doing that it resonates with people. And so I'm proud of it. It also took not a year and a half to write, but 4 years to get done, because we had a kid, and Mile High is a busy place, and it took a while. So I'm proud to have gotten it completed.
Oh, I think it is quite a lovely accomplishment, and thank you for sharing the way in which it emerged in your own life. There's a quote inside this book that says, "That which is always best, returns me to myself." And I wonder if you could talk a little bit about, you already did a little bit, but as you go deeper into these spiritual practices, what returns you to yourself? What are your top go-tos that bring you back to that place of presence and center?
I love that. Well, that's Emerson. And for me, that's you should be the central statement behind a religion of spiritual practices. That which is best always returns me to myself. And what we mean by that is just a sense of interiority of where I am. I mentioned my dad died, and the best way that I grieve Zemirah, and I have to limit it, but it's to grab a couple beers and sit out on the patio underneath the stars and to listen to music that he loved and that I love, and just to cry.
Yeah.
Just to cry. And, none of those things sound like spiritual practices, but done intentionally. I bring the couple beers out because I don't get to go back to get more. I've got the music there, and I'm in nature, and, Jesus' statement, "Blessed are those who mourn." And I'm so grateful that in that sense, and I know this is unorthodox, and I'm not saying everyone should go be drinking beer, but here's this beverage that done consciously can be done to celebrate and be present. And here is music, this natural, amazing, primordial type of thing where, Brown Eyed Girl sounds the same today as it did in 68, whenever it came out, or whatever that may be, that's so timeless. And then being in nature, looking up at the stars and having nowhere else to go. That's an example of something that brings me back to myself. Parenting brings me back to myself. Writing, I always write every Monday morning, no matter what. And it's usually sermon writing because we speak on Sundays, and it's a great thing if you're a speaker and a writer, because you have to be complete with what you say. But I always love maybe not even knowing what I'm going to say, but having that date with inspiration and seeing what comes out. And it always brings me back to the God within myself, my calling to service. And, to be frankly, like, oh shit, I didn't know you had that in you, Josh. What a great idea. And so it's always exciting. And so there's just a couple examples, morning spiritual practice of coffee and meditation as always as well. But those are maybe some of the more unorthodox things that
Well, I love that. I love what you have just shared, because I think you've sort of summarized the essence of what this book can bring to people, is that it's not maybe go out and get although that's wonderful, is to have specific spiritual practices that are more formalized and come to us from faith traditions. But I think you go into how beautifully to look at your life the way it is and to see what emerges that is sacred, that you find sacred, that touches the sacred in you from kind of what we would consider more mundane, daily life, the way our life is. And that you have provided these brilliant tools to kind of raise up that daily life and to find those pieces and to awaken the sacred within them, which I think is so beautifully shared. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's a simple, but, kind of a expansive idea is, in everyday life to be able to recognize that the idea of eternal time or sacred time is actually real time. And I don't know, I think of Fiona Apple one time during an award show, she got up and said, "This world is bullshit." And she was, talking about politics. But the idea being that this thing about calendars and TikTok time, and I've got to get over here and I've got to do this and I have this long to-do list. We convince ourselves that that is real. And really it's pretend. It's fun when you see it as pretend. It's not a bad thing. But when it makes you think that the sacred and the eternal is something we make up in our heads, we've lost it. And nature is the first thing that's there for us. Nature doesn't live on clocks. Nature doesn't know what month it is. It's just going through its stuff. And I remember, we were living in Seal Beach, and it was April, my wife, and Gavin, 8, 9 years old, and the waves are coming by, and it's sunny outside, and it's starting to get dark. And that TikTok part of me says, I wish this moment would last forever. But oh my God, Zemirah, time is fleeting, and we're going to die. It's all going to be over fast. And this also, and it's kind of this terrible feeling. And then, the deeper part of me goes, no. This moment is forever. You've simply convinced yourself that time is a straight line, Josh, and that's not true. And if you can be so present to this moment that you enjoy it fully, it can become a soul memory, something that is eternal. And I know, even sitting right here, as crazy as it sounds, I'm with April and Gavin in that moment on the beach too, like a star that's hanging in the sky, like a constellation that I can return to over and over. Yeah, I'm doing the TikTok time thing again, and yes, there are other soul memories I have, but I would like to see that as not something past, but something eternally present. And each of us has to do the work in their own consciousness to kind of earn that soul memory. So it's not something we're looking back upon, but that is informing our way of being, in the here and the now.
Yeah, that's beautiful. You do talk in the book about how we have to tend to our consciousness of our heart's desires in order to be able to fully receive them and to be able, it's one thing you say, and I bring that forward because you spoke of the consciousness and how we have to do the work to kind of create that within ourselves. What could you speak a little more as to how we can use some of the tools that you bring forth in the book to tend the consciousness, so that maybe it's one thing to have a heart desire, you say in the book, but it's another thing to be able to fully embody it, grow it, and experience those heart desires.
Yes. This sounds a little controversial in our oneness type of thinking here, and I'm a big fan of oneness, but let me throw this out, that we're all of one consciousness, but it doesn't mean we all have the same level of consciousness. We're all of one awareness, but it does not mean we're all practicing the same awareness. And I believe in God, and I think it's one thing to say, oh, I believe in God and I believe in the sacred, and I also think you got to earn your God. You got to earn your sacred. Yes, we all have soul, but you got to earn your soul. And I'm actually working on getting it printed and up on my wall in my living room right now. It's a quote I've always loved, but it's a challenging one from Rilke. And he writes to the young poet, and he says, if your everyday life seems poor, don't blame it. Blame yourself. And immediately, my minister mind goes, no, we don't want guilt. We don't want anything like that. But you know what? Your quality of life is your quality of consciousness. Your quality of life is your quality of consciousness. And you can't just proclaim, I'm going to have a great consciousness today. You've got to do the work. And this is what I think old religious work meant, is that we've got to cultivate through ritual, through practice, through routine, this ability to expand our consciousness and deepen in our relationship with God, or whatever you may call it. And so in the practical end, in the book, what I invite everyone to do is, because we do honor especially the spiritual practices in all faith. Is there a really bad spiritual practice besides self-flagellation, where you beat yourself with a whip? Don't do that one unless you have a safe word, in which case do your thing. But, look and pick some traditional spiritual practices, meditation. We do affirmative prayer in our teaching, a forgiveness practice, yoga, Tai Chi. They're everywhere. And there may even be some old school secular practices like cooking or things as well. But the other thing is to look at your life at the secular things that you do that give you a greater level of awareness. Exercise, running for me is that. There may be certain podcasts that aren't just for entertainment, that like give you wisdom, that uplift you. It could be listening to music, like how I'm grieving my dad in a rich way. It's still sad, but it makes it better. So to highlight those things too, and to build your life around those practices. Don't build your life around your problems. I promise they'll be waiting for you when you get back to them. Don't build your life around other people, because they're, not that they're temporal, but they're role in your life. It will be always changing and transforming. And there's this little thing called codependence that some of us get caught up in. But build your life around these practices every day. And, in the book, I even try to focus on the difference between morning spiritual practice and kind of like free time, middle of the day rituals, and then evening time spiritual practice, so that you're highlighting the best practices throughout the day. But they're all designed to give us three things. I define spiritual practice in the book, I believe, as having reverence for the sacred in the present moment. So anything that we do with reverence for the sacred in the present moment can be a spiritual practice. But I also talk about this idea of relevance. Does it speak to your life here and now today? And then resonance, which means for me that what is happening outside is resonating with something that's going on within me. That's when Zemirah, you and I are reading a book and you hit upon a passage and says, bam, that's just what I needed to hear. Or, oh my God, this is the perfect song that's coming on the radio. Or Zemirah, it's so funny that you mentioned that. And that's when we feel like we're living in conversation with our lives. And there's this thing called congruence. And so when you keep these spiritual practices going, things start moving forward. Or to close answering your question, I love Shunryu Suzuki in Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind. And he says, when you keep doing, for him Zazen, but for us, just spiritual practice in general, we don't discover our true nature. Our true nature resumes itself. It was there all along, and we just reacquaint ourselves with it, and we're living in a flow again. And we're in our own energies, and boy, that's the full life. That's the creative life for me. And that's, again, honoring TikTok time. I honor that I have to go to work and that I have a schedule, but it's, Fiona's right. It's bullshit, and we can participate in it genuinely and authentically, but really the real life is in sacred time. And, the main claim of the book, back to earning your soul and earning your spirit, not to sound traditional Christianity like, but I think in a sense we have to earn our eternal life as well. And we do that not through not sinning and following someone else's religion, but we do so by cultivating an awareness of eternity in our day-to-day existence. And in this life, we become the souls that last eternally, per se.
Oh, so beautifully stated. And I love how you have talked about this over time deepening in our spiritual practices and creating that kind of life and consciousness for ourselves. I wonder too if there's what you say to folks when they come and say, I'm having a pinpoint moment of anxiety or a pinpoint moment of fear, strong fear, particularly when you encounter things in the world or there's some kind of chaos that happens. What is a spiritual, like a go-to? What would you say would be one of your favorite go-to spiritual practices for shifting in the moment? Like when you find yourself in a strong emotion or a strong fear. For those, what is that? How did we respond in that moment?
I know it breaks the rule of interviewing, but do you mind going first? I'd love to hear if you have an answer to that.
I think for me, deep breath. I mean, I have to return to the breath because my mind can really take me. It's really adept with taking me in a direction of maybe. I know many years ago I suffered from panic or from a sense of extreme anxiety, and the only thing that really over time would save me from that, from myself, from my overactive mind or my reactionary nature, was the breath. And so that was one of my go-tos. If I could breathe and drop in. I love how you talked about saturating. I used to call it saturating with grace. How do I have those things? You talked about putting it on your wall, or what are my reminders, those anchors that shift me back into, I can find the sacred right where I am. Those are some of the things that I guess I would call it spiritual triage, if you will. I go to when I start to feel that, oh no. Oh no. And sometimes, as you know, in the world today, there can be a lot of opportunities for oh no, or fear, or things to pop up. So I guess for me, the spiritual practice would be simply breathing.
Yes.
Taking in, and a sense that breath is the divine moving through me. That's my first go-to.
I love that. In a more challenging way, I hope that the book speaks to the importance of the consistency of practices, right? Because those practices become anchor points, and it's almost like, for example, is meditation when I'm 20 minutes in silence, or is meditation the byproduct of those 20 minutes of silence throughout my day, right? And so when shit happens, there's no problem with the shit. The shit is the shit. It's how do I respond to it? And if I have the consistency of those practices, I am prepared to face those. Usually, and I'm going to give a few examples right now. They're kind of like cutesy sounding affirmations, but those came from that. Those came from spiritual practice, and they're things that help me. And I can even share, this morning, and I kind of cursed it, but this last time I moved, there's a thing with the United States Postal Service where they send you a picture of the mail that's coming.
Oh, right.
And so, I have a letter coming today from the IRS.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know what it means, but it's from the IRS, and with my name for something that I helped someone purchase and I co-signed for.
Yeah.
So immediately go to, oh my God, what did I mess up on my taxes? And 2, is so-and-so not paying their bill that I co-signed to? And so reasonable freak out factor, right? So what is, and so that's the first thing, what is my because if we're in
validation.
all is in perfect divine right order. Yes. And this sucks, I'm going to think about that. And let me get back to my practice, right? Where is the essence of that? And, one of the things, and I think it's in the book there somewhere, is you're realizing that gratitude is the right way of seeing the world. It's not just a cute ritual to be grateful, but when I'm in gratitude, I'm in my wholeness. And, listen, stupid thing or thing someone said to me, you're not going to shake me off the wholeness of my gratitude. And I do not have to be thankful for everything in my life to be grateful for the whole of my life. And so when something's making me not me, then something's off. And I'm afraid. or I'm hurting,
Right.
or I'm not in a place of trust. So it's not that something's throwing me off. I mean, that's just how everyday life experience. But the thing that I need to get back to is my practice. And another one that is not in the book that's served me a lot lately, especially with having so much on my plate, is as I am present in the now, God takes care of every how. It's a really helpful one for me, because part of the creation of TikTok time is you got to do this yourself. You've got to do this and that and this. And one of the things that I've learned about myself, Zemirah, is I'm not as smart as I think I am. And yet I am grounded in this infinite wisdom that knows absolutely everything.
Absolutely.
It's a dual thing. And so when I can have the humility to realize that my conscious egoic mind that doesn't know what's going on and is totally freaking out is okay, that's its job. But that I'm also seeped in a much deeper wisdom that is working through everything. And this may be in the book too, but what does it mean to have that prayerful consciousness that says, my consciousness precedes me into every circumstance before I've even entered the room, everyone. And, that's wisdom, that's grace, that's flow, that's Tao. And I don't mean it to sound airy-fairy at all. But to line those future experiences with some sort of intention of grace means that I'm already anchoring that spiritual practice awareness in that future event.
Oh, that's so well said. And
I'm not looking forward to opening the mailbox today.
I understand. I get that. And you know what? You really summed up, I hope that everyone that listens to this at a certain time can hear that in everything that you've shared here in this podcast is really just it's just expanding upon the wealth that's within these pages here. And you wrote in the book that gratitude is a doorway to the sacred, and you just so masterfully explained how it can be used affirmatively in shaping and creating your own response and your own how you respond to what happens in daily life. And I think that's just a perfectly expressed tool. That is one of the ways that I've found is by almost let gratitude and the prayer unite in affirmation, in that I know that I'm shaping my own consciousness, the way that I'm looking at something by the way that I'm stating it within my own mind and in my connection with the divine. So I use it as an affirmative tool to help shape what I want to experience as well, even if it hasn't happened yet. Sometimes I'll say, I'm so grateful that I've found this book that I've been looking for the last 10 minutes. And it's amazing how many times the next place I look on the shelf is that book, and that I am grateful for the direction, the guidance that comes by my remembering to be grateful.
And what I want, and I'm going to put this in the context of my daughter, and this is probably outside of the book, but what I want I have a 6-year-old kid, and what I want more than anything, Zemirah, is for her to trust herself. I want her to trust in her body. I want her to trust in her mind. I want her to trust life around her with discernment. And, sometimes she's going to bed at night and she goes, Daddy, I have anxiety. And in one way I say, oh, cool, how self-aware. And then I also see this TikTok time already reaching in, and she's being taught that when she has a feeling of discernment, really, to begin not trusting herself, not trusting her mind, not trusting her body, everything's going to be falling apart and losing control. We don't want that. This can be a problem in spirituality too. In psychology, Carl Rogers says, that the goal of all therapy is to get the individual to trust in their own organism. Right. And that there's a science of mind part, because we say trust the universe and trust God. Yes. But we also say, you got a monkey mind and the body is carnal and all of this stuff. And it's like, no. My mind is for me and not against me. My body is for me and not against me. It has learned all of this stuff about telling us that we're in control, that we need to control. Well, sacred time, the door to sacred time is trust, right? And you can live your life from control, and that's thinking just what, and I even did it too by saying egoic mind, but that part of ourselves that thinks it's in charge, it's not. It's a part of it, and it's useful. But when we get into control, things start to fall apart because we think that we're the God of our universe, and we're not. Wherein trust is learning to build trust, because to not trust isn't a bad thing. It's to be honest with yourself, but how do you build that? And so when Nancy's in bed and she's saying, I have anxiety, my thing is to tell me more about that, right? What's true? What's really true about who you are? What's true about tomorrow? You're afraid to go to school? You've done pretty well, kid. And can you imagine the courage it takes to go to kindergarten? People is out of control. I don't know if I'd be able to do it, but you've done 100 and some days without any real incidents. I think you're going to do good tomorrow. What do you think? Yeah, I think I'm going to do good too. But we even have to watch the spiritual industrial complex, which sometimes needs us to not trust ourselves so that we go back to what it is, when really we do that. And not to back up too far, but what I know about you, and we have a great professional relationship working together at Mile High Church, but you have earned this life. And I think you've gone through some trials and tribulations. And what I love about you is how intentional you are. I'm guessing that you prepare and plan in your mind quite the prayerful consciousness about where you're going to dinner, right? Or what you're going to do after, or what you're going to do in a class. And what I admire that about you is it's not from a place of control. It's a place of trusting yourself and preparing and building that space. And, if you're listening and you're new to this stuff, that ain't going to happen overnight for you. That's going to be the result of a lot of hard work and a lot of practice. But you can start with lunch today. Right. You can start with your date with so-and-so today, or your courageous conversation with your child, or whatever it is, to bring that sense of intentionality and the sacred there. And I do think this is in the book, but, for those of us who have a lot of anxiety or PTSD and trauma, and these are all real things, but these are also things that we need to have discernment about. As well, and not forget how powerful and responsive we can be to these things. But one of the things I talk about in the book is just that affirmation of I am a safe place, and I am sacred place, a space. And you don't need always to create a safe environment to be a safe environment. You don't always have to find a sacred space to be a sacred space. And when we know that about ourselves in bed, when we're trying to go to bed, or in us having a conversation, and I know you're upset with me and it's creeping, and I'm so scared that it's not going to go well, that, I can be that presence. And when we can be that presence for ourselves, it's amazing how we can transform even the most difficult of anxieties, and bring things forward. And as someone who still struggles with that, even these last few weeks, a big kind of affirmation, or at least saying that I've been saying to myself, Zemirah, is, Josh, why do you so infrequently give yourself credit for what you're capable of, right? Or to put it another way, Josh, you are capable of so much more than you give yourself credit for. And so, am I going to get enough sleep tonight? Am I going to do okay with the Easter sermon? Am I going to handle this meeting with so-and-so well? The answer is yeah. You're going to fall asleep eventually, or whatever that may be. And yet there's this part of me that so distrusts myself that I have to continue to respond to and say, it's okay, and even you can come along for the ride, and get integrated so that we can live our lives more fully, because you're going to do a good job anyways, but you want to enjoy life. And when we're not, present in it, we're missing the sacredness that also gives us the power and the life force that we need to do bigger and better things.
That's wonderfully said. And thank you so much for sharing all of those really real and authentic experiences, because I think it's so relatable. That's another thing that I think is so powerful about your book, is that it's very relatable. Who hasn't had the scary potential conversation to come or the things to address. But I love how you speak about trust. And I think for me personally, the more that I have come to the spiritual practice, that it is that field that slowly, the trust, the sense that I always know I'll experience. If I slow down and if I tune in, I will sense the sacred. It's always there. It's just my mind that sometimes forgets or puts the things in the way of it always being there. But that's what I've experienced over time, that trust comes from every time I have that sense of safety that comes from the practice itself, as opposed to just, at first I would just know about it, or I did eat more books than maybe the hungry caterpillar. But that eventually it started to be like, oh, that's that place that I touch every time I breathe or I slow down and feel it there. That's my go-to. So panic did go away for me over time, but it wasn't overnight, and it wasn't even it was over a long period of time. But it went away. I think I would attribute it simply to the spiritual practices for myself.
And, it's almost like you can put sacred time and secular time in this basket of, there's our way of life, and then there's our way of working or being in the world. And they're both important, but when your way of work is an expression of your way of life, you're dialed in. And way of life is spiritual practice, wherein the other way around, if your way of life is a result of your way of working. And we put that in the book, like I just want to drink margaritas at the resort. and we even say words like, I need to unplug. I want to turn off. That sounds, what? You want to die? You want to not exist? What we really mean to say is I want to unplug from my way of work and plug into my way of life. Yes. You don't want to turn off.
Yeah.
You really don't. You want to turn on, and that means to get back to that way of life. And I say that in ministry a lot too, because ministry can be the most full of shit industry in the world. A bunch of people saying one thing and living a different way. And for me, the congruence of ministry is my way of work as a minister, and it is hard work. You know that. It is hard work. But when it's a result of my way of life, then I'm in congruence. And even when it's hard, I'm happy. But when it's not a result, when it's not coming out of the meditation and not coming out of the practices, then it's like the most terrible job times two. Because not only do I hate my job, I'm also full of shit. That's not a good place to be.
No. Oh, I can so relate. And I just want to thank you so much for taking us on such an embodied tour of this treasure, this gems of information. And I just encourage anyone listening to, if you have a desire to live your life from that sense of soul, or to merge that sense of way of life with how you show up in the world and have it all meet together in an integrated way, I encourage you to pick up Josh's book, because it really is a treasure house of ways to cultivate a more meaningful, depth, safe sense of presence in your life. And so I hope you'll also pick it up, open to a page, and see if it's just speaking straight to you. So yeah, anything more you want to add for folks?
I just want to thank you, Zemirah. Part of my goal here as a minister at Mile High Church is to see people and lift them up and encourage them. And I didn't ask to have this podcast today, so you thought of it and worked with Bobby, our producer, and asked me to do it. And so I just want you to know that I feel seen by you and appreciated too, and ministered and uplifted. And that's a very nice thing to get to receive. So I just acknowledge you, and it's been great having this conversation with you today.
Oh, likewise. It is an honor to work with you, Josh, and to be to just sit and listen to as you share that just kind of stream of wisdom from within your heart. So thank you.
Thank you.